As Billy Abbott sat in the lounge of the Genoa City Athletic Club, which was outfitted with dim lighting, he was lost in thought. He was pondering something. It was a drink that he was whirling. Over the course of the previous few weeks, there had been a flurry of mistakes and broken promises. It had been a lot of chaos. Recent decisions that he had taken had been done on the spur of the moment, even carelessly, and Lily Winters was the one who had to come to terms with the consequences of his actions. He was conscious that he had finally arrived at a moment of reckoning. If he wanted to have any hope of putting things right, he needed to confront Lily and apologize. Now, as he sat there wondering about what he should do next, he was aware that they had finally arrived at a moment of reckoning. Sincere apologies are offered. The way Lily entered the lounge was as if she was waiting for her to arrive. There was a guarded expression on her face that communicated to Billy that she was prepared to keep a distance from him so that she could protect herself. It appeared as though she was calm and collected. He stood up, cleared his throat, and approached her with a sense of anxiety that was eating away at him. He was nervous about what was going to happen. He hushed Lily while presenting a timid smile and called out in a low voice. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "Are you able to spare a moment?" Lily raised her eyebrow and crossed her arms as she watched the situation unfold. "Is it just a moment?" "Billy, it is more than what you promised me when you made all of those decisions by yourself without consulting anyone else. Thanks for the opportunity." Billy smiled and nodded his head in response to the criticism that was directed at him. Her assessment was entirely accurate. He had been so obsessed with his own goals that he had disregarded her concerns and pushed her to the background rather than giving them any consideration. He had been so preoccupied with his own ambitions. His tone of voice was subdued as he acknowledged the argument and said, "Fair point. Listen, I am conscious of the fact that I have committed an error. Neither your ideas nor your advice were taken into consideration, and I proceeded without giving any thought to the actions that I was taking. It is my fault, and I should have known better. I apologize." Lily let out a sigh, indicating that she was clearly struggling with her sentiments of wrath. "Are you serious, Billy, and do you really think that it is that simple? Are you seriously under the impression that we are supposed to dismiss anything with only a few words?" When asked for his reaction, Billy responded, "No, I don't expect that," with a tone of desperation creeping into his remark. Having said that, I was of the opinion that it was essential to make an effort to explain myself. If you choose to allow me the opportunity to speak, it is only because I want you to understand what I am saying. Before pointing toward one of the tables that was empty, Lily paused for a few minutes before making her decision. "It's acceptable. We should discuss it." Following his decision to take a seat, Billy took a few long, deep breaths and was able to collect his thoughts before proceeding. "I am aware that I have been impulse-driven," he stated in response. "You know, I was genuinely under the assumption that I was behaving in a manner that was suitable toward the situation. The idea that I was protecting both ourselves and the corporation by moving rapidly was something that I had been under the assumption of. The fact that no one else benefited from the things that we had made together was something that I considered to be very important." Lily shook her head and continued, indicating that she was bored. "If I understand correctly, you did not think that I would be interested in participating in the decisions that were being made. It was supposed to be a collaborative effort between the two of us, Billy. If you are feeling intimidated, you cannot just go crazy and do anything you want whenever you feel threatened." The response that Billy gave was, "I know," and his voice was hardly discernible above a whisper. "I have arrived at the conclusion that that is what I expect. I have been acting on instinct for a very long time, and I have always had the feeling that I need to prove myself to everyone, but especially to you. I have been functioning on instinct for a very long length of time. While I was engaged in the activity that I was engaging in, I did not give any consideration to the possibility that I was driving you away. There was a change in Lily's facial expression, but her irritation did not go anytime soon. It is not enough to merely establish your value, Billy. This is not the ultimate goal. The key to success here is trust. In spite of the fact that I had faith in you, you behaved as if I were nothing more than a mere accessory to your objectives, rather than a partner on an equal footing. Following the hearing of her remarks, Billy's shoulders dropped, giving the impression that he had been struck by a blow. You are completely and utterly right. Despite the fact that I ought to have appreciated our collaboration at a higher level, I failed to do so, and I can't even begin to fathom the extent of the pain that this caused you. Dear Lily, I sincerely apologize. It is accurate. The strain of his words hung between them like a weight, and they managed to maintain their silence for a limited length of time. Eventually, Lily spoke, and as she did so, her tone became more muted. Billy, I am aware of the fact that you have excellent intentions. Yet every time you make decisions without discussing me, it gives the image that you are leaving everything that we have established. I am conscious of this fact. On the other hand, rather of concentrating simply on business, the emphasis ought to be placed on respect and cooperation. In the event that we do not hold that, what else do we have in our possession? Billy looked down as he battled to come to terms with the decisions he had made and the implications of those decisions. Lily, if I am being completely honest, I am at a loss for words. Blindness is a result of my need for control and my fear of failure, both of which have contributed to my blindness. It is now abundantly evident to me. Despite the fact that I am conscious of the fact that I have caused you sorrow, I am begging your forgiveness regardless of whether or not I am worthy of receiving it. The expression on Lily's face was indecipherable when she was looking at him. Now, Billy, if you had the ability to change anything, what would you do then? In the event that I decide to give you another chance, what distinguishing characteristics are there that make this time around different from the last one? The instantaneous response that Billy gave was, I'll listen. One could see a glint of determination emerging from his eyes. I will honor our connection in the same way that I ought to have done from the very beginning of our partnership. It is my hope that we are both on an equal footing, Lily. You should not get the idea that you are only going through the motions, because I do not want that to be the case. Despite her continued skepticism, Lily was moved by his genuineness, and she shook her head in accord. To start off on the right foot. Putting it another way, Billy, it will require more than just words to convey the message. Actions speak louder than words ever could. I am very much aware, he said. All that is required of me is to show it to you. I will do whatever it takes to accomplish this. She averted her attention for a little period of time in order to process everything that was going on. She was suffering with both anger and a lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, he had finally learned his lesson. Billy could see the tightness in her eyes, and he could see that she was struggling with both of these emotions. He had the ability to perceive the depth of her feelings. All right, Billy, Lily finally responded, keeping a calm tone in her voice throughout the entire conversation. I'm going to give you one more chance to change your mind. On the other hand, if you continue to make errors, if you start making decisions without consulting me, or if you fail to prioritize our partnership, then I will no longer be a part of this initiative. At this point, I am unable to continue to go through this with you together. It was the relief that Billy felt that led his face to light up, and a genuine smile burst through the tension that had been apparent in his expression. This is a delight for me, Lily. This time, I solemnly swear that I will not let you down in any way. The tension that had been building up between them began to gradually dissipate as they continued to sit there side by side. For the very first time in his life, Billy felt an overwhelming sense of resolve flood over him. He had allowed his worries and his inclination to behave impulsively to drive him for a far longer period of time than he should have, but he realized that if he wanted to have any chance of having Lily in his life, he needed to make some adjustments. And from this point forward, he was unwavering in his determination to achieve the desired result by all methods that were accessible to him. Despite the fact that Lily was heaving a sigh, she just managed to summon a fleeting smile. It is important for you to keep in mind, Billy, that I am not searching for a hero, but rather a comrade. Either we are in this together, or we are not in this together at all. Together we are in this together. The moment Billy understood the significance of what she had said, he gave a slight nod indicating his agreement. Lily, we are in the same room. This is the point at which I solemnly swear. Tracy Abbott walked around Genoa City with a delighted smile that tugged at the sides of her lips and a bounce in her step. She was a delight to be around. Despite the fact that she did not exhibit her capacity to pull off surprises very frequently, today was an exception to that rule. She finally identified the ideal solution to express to Alan, her ex-lover and longtime buddy, how much he meant to her. After spending weeks organizing the ideal method to explain to him how much he meant to her, they had just recently gotten back together, which was a wonderful and unexpected turn of events in her life. They had gotten back together. The easy company that they had formerly provided for one another was brought back to them by this feeling. The fact that Alan was oblivious of what she had anticipated was something that she was well aware of, and this was exactly how she wanted things to remain. Alan Morris, a member of the writing community with whom she had collaborated in the past, had just recently returned to Genoa City in order to begin working on his most current project. They had reconnected with one another as a result of their mutual interest in the craft of storytelling. Even though they had ended their love engagement in a calm manner many years ago, there was still a special connection that lingered between them after that. This connection was something that they shared. Over the course of the previous several months, they had spent a substantial amount of time together, reminiscing and chatting about books, life, and the unexpected turns of circumstances that had brought them back into each other's orbit. They had also spent a lot of time together. The message that Alan had received from Tracy this morning was cryptic and stated, "Meet me at the Abbott cabin with me." Alan had received this message this morning. It is my guarantee that it will be well worth the effort. Tracy arrived at the residence 1 hour before the time that they were scheduled to meet in order to get things ready for the meeting. Because it was tucked away in a distant spot by a lake and surrounded by tall trees that created a sense of calm and privacy, the cabin was a treasure for the family. It was a place where they cherished spending time together. She had planned all of the little details, such as a wonderful blanket that was placed by the fireplace, a basket that was filled with Alan's favorite treats, and a stack of first editions of books written by his favorite authors. She had also coordinated all of the little touches. She even found an old manuscript of his work that had never been published, a piece that he had mentioned to her in passing many years ago, but had since forgotten about, and she placed it in the display that she had constructed. She had discovered it in the process of creating the show. Tracy was able to rest and unwind while the fire was crackling and warming up the room. Her pulse was pumping with excitement from the joy she was experiencing. Her intuition told her that Alan would be moved by the news. It was through the act of sharing the Abbott cabin with Alan in this fashion that she was able to feel as though she was inviting him back into a personal area of her life. This was despite the fact that the Abbott cabin had memories for her and her family. When she turned her head to gaze out the window, she heard the sound of footsteps tapping on the gravel outside. A few moments later, Alan was standing at the entrance to the house. He took in the cozy arrangement that she had arranged for him, and his face was filled with an expression of curiosity as he did so. His eyes swept the area. When he entered the room, he greeted her with a smile that gradually evolved into real surprise as he took in the scene that she had crafted. In the moment that he entered the room, he screamed out, "Tracy!" Alan is here." The tone of Tracy's response was one of friendliness as she approached him. "We would like to extend a warm welcome to the home of the Abbott family. It is my sincere wish that it is of the same enchantment that I have described it to be." One could detect a sense of astonishment in Alan's voice as he responded, "More so." It was first the excellent arrangement beside the fireplace that caught his attention. Next, it was the stack of books that had been carefully selected. And finally, it was Tracy herself who caught his attention. His gaze traveled throughout the room. "I find it hard to believe that you have accomplished all of this." When Tracy carried him over to the blanket, she let out a chuckle as she did so. "The reason I am sending you this message is to express to you how much gratitude I have for our friendship. I must say that getting back in touch with you has been, well, it has been a blessing. This is despite the fact that I am conscious that we are both in different stages of our lives." An expression of kindness appeared on Alan's face. "It has also been a gift for me," she remarked. "I am grateful for it. A sense of familiarity and comfort has been developed via the process of getting back in touch with you, despite the fact that returning to Genoa City appeared to be an impossible proposition." They positioned themselves on the blanket in order to make themselves comfortable in the midst of the books and the warmth of the fire. Using the thermos that she had taken along with her, Tracy poured a cup of hot cider for each of them, and the cabin was filled with the aroma of the beverage as she did so. For a little length of time, the two of them did nothing more than sit in a comfortable stillness, taking pleasure in the warmth and the memories that they shared with one another that were all around them. Immediately after that, Alan's attention was drawn to the old manuscript that was positioned on the side table, and he picked it up with a curious smile on his face. As he recognized his own handwriting on the cover page, which had gotten severely faded, his disposition shifted because of this realization. It was Tracy. To be more specific, "Where did you get this?" A sense of awe and curiosity could be heard in his voice when he posed the question. "I was on the edge of completely failing to remember that I had a novel to write. The fact that you were able to remember that is truly fascinating." The glint in Tracy's eyes was accompanied with a shrug that she gave. "It was during a late-night writing session that took place many years ago that you brought it up for the first time. There is no way to know for certain whether or not it would bring back certain memories, but I was hoping that it would. Are you of the opinion that it will inspire you?" As Alan opened the manuscript and began to flip through the pages, a wistful smile came on his face while he was doing so. To put it simply, this was the very first time that I attempted to compose something that came straight from the heart. Despite the fact that it was not perfect, it was mine to begin with. Something that I never believed would occur was that no one else would ever remember it, never alone locate it. I was completely unprepared for this. Tracy felt a warmth that was not only reassuring, but also entirely natural between the two of them as she placed her palm on his arm. This warmth was a result of the combination of the two of them. In every instance, Alan, the words that you utter have the ability to penetrate the minds of those around you. My instincts told me that there was something special about this, and I wanted to bring to your attention the components that contribute to your individuality and make you who you are. His eyes met hers as he looked up, and his demeanor conveyed a sense of gratitude to her throughout the entire interaction. Tracy, if I may be really honest, I am at a loss for words. This is something that cannot be overstated in terms of its relevance. As a writer, you frequently discover that you spend so much time in your own thoughts that you forget that other people are interested in these elements of yourself. This is a common occurrence. Tracy smiled broadly as she leaned back into the cushions of the couch and leaned back against the couch. You may believe me when I say that I am well aware of what you are referring to. On the other hand, there are situations in which those minuscule parts are the ones that are far more valuable. The following hour was spent flipping through the book, during which time Alan told stories with them and laughed at his younger self's attempts at writing language that were unnecessarily ambitious. During this time, Alan also recounted anecdotes with them. The cabin was filled with their laughing and the warmth of old memories, which gave the feeling that the solitary and tranquil spot was alive in a different way than it had been before. The past did not appear to be so far away. Rather, it seemed to blend in seamlessly with the present, which resulted in a sense of peace and the hope that something better was on the horizon. At the moment when the sun was beginning to set over the lake outside, Alan halted his work on the text and extended his hand to take Tracy's hand. "Tracy, there is something that I have been wanting to tell you, and I want to tell you about it. I want to tell you about it." Tracy's heart skipped a beat as she glanced at him, and she could see a tinge of fear in her eyes. This caused her to find herself staring at him. Exactly who or what is it? The tone of Alan's voice became more compassionate. "The feeling that I have rediscovered a part of myself that I had previously assumed I had lost is something that I have experienced. Being in this room with you is similar to that. As I return to this location, Tracy, I find myself wondering whether or not I had left something unfinished earlier. I have always found you to be a soothing presence in my life, and the fact that you are currently present causes me to harbor some concern." Tracy's face lit up with excitement as she held his hand, and her eyes remained steady throughout the entire act. "There is no need for you to offer any comments, Alan. They are not required. The fact that I am conscious of the fact that I have been successful in making a difference is sufficient." Alan, on the other hand, responded by shaking his head while maintaining his stare fixated on hers during the entire exchange. "No, Tracy," which was her response. "Because I am here with you, and we are sharing these memories, I have been reminded of how much you have always meant to me during this time. Please be aware that I am thankful for the chance that has been presented to me. Additionally, if you are of the same opinion as I am, it is possible that we may start a new company together, a circumstance that does not yield a resolution at this particular time." The joy that Tracy felt in her heart was something that she hadn't experienced in a very long time, and the sparkle of emotion that she displayed in her eyes brought a smile to her face. "I think that will be something that I agree with, Alan. Perhaps there are some things that are worth going back over again, particularly when you have the perfect person by your side." They smiled at one another, a glance that seemed to be filled with optimism and a freshly acquired awareness of where they stood relative to one another. The bond that had initially brought them together had, over the course of time, evolved into something that was more substantial and considerably deeper. When they were sitting by the fire, Tracy felt a sensation of peace that engulfed her. Their hands were clasped together, and they were holding hands. She came to the conclusion that perhaps happiness was not about discovering anything new. Rather, it was about accepting what was already present and waiting for the appropriate moment to be rediscovered. This was the first time in years that she had come to this realization with any degree of certainty. At that same time, Nate Hastings was seated in his office, staring intently at his phone, which was open and displaying a message from Amy McKenna. In Genoa City, Nate was one of the few people who could provide support to her, and she was in need of assistance more than anything else. It was not a mystery to him that she had come to him for a particular cause. Even though he had not seen Amy in years, it was difficult to overlook the fact that they had a history together. Amy was someone he had known for a long time. She was someone he had been close to in the past, and despite the fact that they had not seen one another in years, they were still acquainted. Nevertheless, he did not make the decision to add her troubles to his already full plate in a flippant manner, because his own life was already chaotic. He decided to add her difficulties to his already full plate. Nate recalled the last time he had seen Amy, which was at the time that he was contemplating the possibility of doing so. Being a lady who possessed a strong will and a great deal of ambition, She was eager to make a reputation for herself in the field of medicine. She was eager to establish a name for herself. The chaotic environment of the hospital was where they had spent a significant amount of time together as they were working toward the completion of their residency. After going through the stress and the sleepless nights that they had to undergo, they developed a mutual respect for one another that they shared with one another. However, something had happened over the course of the years. Nate had moved on to start a life in Genoa City, while Amy had vanished into her own world of issues. Both of these events occurred simultaneously. At this exact time, she was pleading with him, pleading for a solution to her problem. Nevertheless, she was left wondering whether or not he was willing to deliver it. At that moment, he was jerked out of his thoughts by the sound of someone knocking on the door of his office. Elena walked into the room, and the warm smile that she wore made her an inviting presence. Immediately following the conclusion of her remarks, she closed the door behind her and continued by saying, "Hey, I was hoping you weren't too busy. You appear to be lost in thought." You could say that, that's for sure. After he had finished speaking on the phone, Nate leaned back in his chair and scratched his temples. After that, he leaned back once more. I was able to get a message from Amy McKenna delivered to my inbox. Elena's eyebrow was raised to a higher position. Amy? When was the last time I heard you talk about her? It has been a very long time from then. What precisely is taking place here? She is needing my support because she is now in a challenging circumstance. During the course of his response, Nate turned his head to look at the letter that had not yet been opened. I haven't read all the details yet, but it sounds serious, he stated to reporters. To put it simply, Elena, I am at a loss for what to do today. When everything that is going on here, including work, family, and everything else, is taken into consideration, things are already convoluted enough to be considered complicated. Based on my instincts, I believe that I am not in a position to take on this challenge at this time. Elena moved closer to him and placed a soothing hand on his shoulder as she moved closer to him. Despite the fact that I am conscious of the fact that you are already juggling a lot of things, I believe that if Annie is reaching out to you, it must be something significant. Nate, you have always shown a concern for helping other people all throughout your life. It has already become a component of your identity. Nate let out a sigh, expressing his appreciation for her remarks while simultaneously realizing the significance of the decision. The answer is yes, I am aware of it, but I do not want to make a decision that could potentially work against me. In addition to seeking the advice of medical professionals, it appears that she is in dire need of someone to take responsibility of the matter rather than merely seeking medical advice. Moreover, if I engage in physical activity, it may have an effect on a greater number of people than simply myself. Relocating her to Genoa City and locating some kind of assistance for her in the neighboring area are also potential courses of action that could be taken. Regardless of what takes place, this is not a matter of insignificance. At the moment that she sat down opposite him, Elena wore a serious expression on her face. You make a valid point. This is not a matter of insignificance. Nate, however, there are times when the people who reach out in this manner are seeking for a last chance. In those cases, they are asking for a final opportunity, a true friend or comrade. Imagine that you are the person she is talking about and think about what it would mean to her if you were that person. Nate indicated that he was resonating with Elena's thoughts by acknowledging them with a nod. Due to the fact that life had taken them in various directions, Amy was a friend, yet they were no longer acquainted with one another. Nate had the idea that she had exhausted all of her options, regardless of the reason that she had reached out to him at this particular moment in time. Following the inhalation of a deep breath, he proceeded to unlock his phone, and after what seemed like an eternity, opened Michelle's message. She continued, "Nate, I know it's been a while, and I wouldn't be asking if I had any other choice." And her words appeared on the screen in a manner that was rapid but had a heavy feeling of urgency. "I would not be asking if I had any other choice," she said. "A worsening of the situation has occurred as a result of the current situation. I hope you can help me. In the event that you are unable to, I entirely understand. However, if you are able to, kindly let me know if there is any way to solve this problem." He went back and read it once more, his mind racing with memories of the time they had spent together as well-known friends. Amy had been there for him so many times that he could not even begin to list the many times she had been there for him. Throughout her entire life, she had never been the type of person to ask for favors and had always been fiercely independent on her own. The fact that she reached out to me in such a manner was definitely a terrible thing to do. It was after he had finished looking at Elena that he started to think about his choice. You are completely and utterly right. If she did not require it, she would not consider making an inquiry about it. My support is going to be of great benefit to her. On Elena's face, there was a sliver of a smile that showed her pride. In my opinion, the choice that you are making is the most appropriate one. What exactly are you planning to do? The solution that Nate provided was, I'll call her first, see what's going on. And he rose up with a revitalized sense of purpose. Nate's response was given. If it is something that I am able to handle from this point forward, then I will go ahead and tackle it. In the event that this is not the case, then I reserve the right to cross that bridge at the appropriate time. Elena nodded a nod of approval, as she does very frequently as well. You are aware that I will be here for whatever it is that you require. In a gesture of gratitude, Nate extended his hand to firmly grab her hand and then gave it a pleasant squeeze. Elena, it is a pleasure. Thank you. I simply do not believe that I would be able to pull this off if it were not for you. Nate paused for a while to collect his thoughts before calling Amy's phone. This occurred during the time that she was departing. His heartbeat quickened as he listened to the ring, and he prayed that whatever it was that he was about to hear would not completely transform his life. He couldn't wait to find out what it was. Nate, he inquired. The voice that was heard was that of Amy, and it was tired but relieved at the same time. I am grateful that you called. Amy, he continued in a low voice, I have received your message. This was his next statement. What is the current situation? Would you be able to help me out? Despite the fact that she had not yet completed her sentence, he was able to understand the significance of her remarks after a brief pause. Hello, Nate. Things have been challenging at the moment. In the beginning, I was involved with a person who I thought I could trust, but as time went on, I realized that he was dangerous. For the first time in my life, I no longer feel safe. And as for myself, I am completely clueless on where else to go. Nate's jaw tightened up at the mere thought of anyone putting her in danger, and his wrath reached a point where it was boiling over. Do you find yourself in imminent danger? As she responded, her voice was shaking. Not at this time, but he is familiar with a number of people, she said. Although I made an effort to get in touch with the authorities, it only served to make the situation far more precarious. The idea of leaving town and starting a new life was something I gave some thought to. But I do not have anyone who can help me with this quest. It is going to be very challenging for me to even begin to explain. With each passing moment, Nate's resolve became stronger. Yes, Amy, I am going to be of assistance to you in completing this assignment. The next step will be determined by us working together. If you need a place to go, I will make sure that you are taken care of. I am familiar with people who are able to assist in assuring your safety, and I will make sure that you are taken care of too. Will you just remain where you are for the time being? Her tone was filled with a sense of freedom. This is a pleasure for me, Nate. Whether or not you would be willing to take part in the activity was not evident to me, but it is of the utmost significance that you do become involved. His response was confident and unwavering. Of course. It is not only that much that I owe you. I owe you considerably more. It would be helpful if you could just give me your word that you will no longer attempt to address this matter on your own. Amy's response was, I promise, and as she continued to speak, her tone became more determined. With regard to Nate, he has stated, I will never, ever forget this. It was at the time that Nate was hanging up the phone that he felt the weight of his decision beginning to settle over him. Even though he was aware that helping Amy could make his life more difficult, he was unable to turn his back on someone who was in need, especially someone who had once meant a great deal to him. Amy was someone who he had helped in the past. Because of the challenges that lie ahead, it is quite probable that his patience, resources,